a very festive welcome. Hashtag Elfie
Elfie.
on the hat of one Chris Halicke today. Looking good, man.
Listen, Christmas is only what's today's date? The 15th, 10 days away.
10 days, yep.
10 days away. Yeah, I'm feeling the Christmas spirit today.
There you go.
Today is the first day of my kids' winter break, so Christmas movies are playing nonstop. So I'm feeling the Christmas spirit. So
very spirited today.
There we go.
Very good. Very, very good. And now he gets up until what, like January 3rd or whatever it is with your kids now?
January 3rd is the day that they go back. Yeah. So
nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, Elfie Chris. There we go.
Let me take an Elfie. For those listening, audio only, Chris has a baseball cap on with a pom-pom on the top, a white pom-pom, and the elf ears sticking out, of the brim.
And I can't
Elfie. And he's got a T-shirt on. That is a very nice T-shirt there.
Festive Ted Lasso Believe Ugly Christmas Sweater T-shirt.
Nicely done. Nicely done. Hodge says, early Christmas present tomorrow, Steelers W.
All right.
Stella comes in, $2 contribution.
If I need to dress weird to get some money, I mean.
Whoa. This is not the website for that, pal. It's a different website. That's a different medium right there. Oh, an early Christmas present it would be for Steeler Nation if the Steelers were able to pull off a win tomorrow in Indianapolis against the Colts. 4:30 kickoff on NFL Network, and I believe it's broadcast locally too. I can't remember if it's KDKA or one of the locals or TAE or PX. I can't remember, but anyway.
It'll be in our live file tomorrow for sure.
There is a game, by the way, before Christmas still to be played, the 23rd, when the Steelers host the Bengals. So maybe one or two Christmas gifts, but one thing that Steeler fans are not hoping for is that lump of coal in the form of a loss. And this week's game, as we have talked about all throughout the course of the weekdays, it's massive in terms of the implications for the AFC playoffs. Now, obviously, the Steelers and Colts both at 7-6. Obviously, a conference win is at stake when it comes to the tiebreakers.
Yep.
Those are massive. And just to lay it out briefly, if the Steelers lose this game, the Colts and the Texans would have the tiebreakers over them.
Yep.
So for postseason jockeying and for, 3 weeks from down the road or 4 weeks from down the road when the Steelers wrap up in Baltimore to end the season, this game is going to reflect one way or another in a massive, massive way, which is why we asked the question, is Saturday truly do or die for these Steelers?
Yeah, I really do believe it is. I mean, when you look at the teams that are in the mix there, listen, I mean, all the teams that are 7-6 right now, you got the Steelers, the Colts, the Texans, the Broncos, the Bengals, and the Bills. Obviously, the Steelers play the Bengals, and that's a big one because they kind of need to win that one too, just to stay ahead of them. The Bills, even though they're 7-6, I still think they're a dangerous team. When you have Josh Allen who can turn it on at any moment and kind of take over a game, you can't dismiss that, right? The Broncos are playing a tough brand of football right now. They started off terribly, but they're playing a tough brand of football. And so the biggest thing here is, regardless of what all the other situations are, the Steelers are in a situation right now that they weren't in last year, and that is they are in control of their own destiny or fate or whatever word you want to put on there. If they win out, now granted, that's far from a guarantee, but if they win out, they're in the playoffs no matter what, because they cannot fall to any worse than they are right now, regardless of what all the other teams do. If all those other 7-6 teams, now obviously it's impossible because the Steelers play the Colts and they play the Bengals, so those teams wouldn't be the same record, but let's just say hypothetically they didn't. If the Steelers and all those other 7-6 teams finish with the same record right now, the Steelers would have the ultimate tiebreaker over all of them.
Yes.
So ultimate control. And that is why a game like this against the Colts and a game next week on Christmas Eve against the Bengals are the two biggest games, because they're both against two of these other teams that are right there in that same mix that the Steelers are trying to hold an advantage over.
3 out of the last 4 games are against AFC opponents, obviously the final game of the year
Yep.
in Baltimore. And for the Ravens, that could mean one of many things. Number one, it could mean locking up the 1 seed in the AFC, which that's the only bye. That's a massive deal. Number two, it could also mean, in effect, locking up the AFC North, depending on the rest of what happens in these last 3 weeks. So, and it also continges on, as far as what happens with Baltimore, it also hinges on what happens with the rest of the AFC, namely Kansas City and Miami. So there's implications on every team in the AFC now going throughout.
Yeah.
And for the Steelers' sake, again, you mentioned it right there with, getting the conference win, getting the division win in back-to-back weeks would set them up very, very well.
Very well. You could probably even afford to lose the game in Seattle and still probably end up clinching one of those 3 wild card spots.
Now that being said, we're looking way far ahead with that.
Yep. For sure.
This week, and many players from within the locker room this week have said it. This is playoffs right now.
Yep.
This is win now. This is we got to go now. And that's why, last week when Landon Roberts, it was thought like, why would he play on a short week injured? It's because now they have to win now. Yep. There's no waiting. There's no more wait till the end of the season, wait for long-term stuff. They have to go now. And which is why it's so frustrating to have to talk about an offense that's been lagging all year, that's been one of the worst in the NFL all year, that has no, I guess, way of improving. And then you look at the defense that's been gashed on all 3 levels at different points of the season. So like this season has been so filled with twists and turns, but at the same time, they're still in a good position. If they could take care of a win on Saturday, then you're in a good spot. Now, I don't think the Steelers can win Saturday and lose out and still make the postseason. I still think with everything that it sits right now, it's got to take 10 wins to get in.
Yep.
And from that point, it would not only absolve some of those tiebreakers, but it would also give the Steelers an advantage. So if they could finish 3-1, that's the ideal circumstance to me. If they finish 2-2, they're on the fringe, and depending on who the losses are, I don't know. That's the ambiguity of the situation. If they go 1-3 to end the year or worse, forget it.
Yeah,
forget it. I mean, 8 wins is not going to get you in this year. It just simply is not. And we said this from the start of the year, like 10, maybe 11 was the cutoff in the AFC. It's a really deep AFC, and you have to look at what's around the rest of the Steelers with respect to the AFC. Like any of these teams, when it comes to the Steelers, the Colts, the Texans, the Bengals, the Bills, any of those teams can get in very easily.
Yep.
And if I remember correctly, the Colts play the Texans again. Obviously, the Bengals play the Steelers again. There's interdivision, interconference matchups that still have to play out that don't involve the Steelers. But getting a win on Saturday would set the Steelers up so nicely. And now we just have to find a way to talk about how are they going to do it? How are they going to do this on Saturday without Kenny Pickett again, Mitch Trubisky getting in Mike Tomlin's words, full week of in-helmet reps, which is apparently a big thing right now for a guy in his, 7th year, 8th year?
Yeah.
6th year, whatever it is. Apparently that's a big deal now, getting Mitch Trubisky in helmet reps this week.
Yeah.
But, how do they find a way? How do they do this when over the last 2 games against the Cardinals and the Patriots, they couldn't squeak points out?
Yeah, it's gonna take a full effort from both the players and from the coaches. The coaches. I'm looking at whenever I'm looking, and my next opponent piece on the Colts is going to be coming out very shortly after we get off the show. It's all written up, ready to go. Just got to get some other minor things done on it, and it'll be ready to go. So you'll kind of see in there. There's another a couple of favorable matchups in this game for the Steelers. The Colts are, opposing quarterbacks are getting the ball out fast against the Colts, and they have to because the Colts are really good at getting after the quarterback.
Good pass rush, yep.
And when Mitch Trubisky gets rid of the ball in less than 2.5 seconds, he's actually pretty good. I mean, the numbers are there. I mean, the numbers are pretty good, and I'll let you see them whenever that piece goes up on the site here, shortly. He's actually pretty good when he gets the ball out quick. It's not amazing. It's not like it's like 6.3 yards per attempt. It's not anything like earth shattering, but it's multiple touchdowns and no interceptions. It's a good completion percentage. It's numbers that you want to see from a backup quarterback, like good numbers from a backup quarterback. When he holds on to the ball, he's terrible. And if he is forced to hold on to the football in this game, he's not going to get anything done.
Mm-hmm.
So the Steelers need to go in knowing we have to find ways to call passing concepts that are going to be able to let Mitch get rid of the ball quickly, but also test the Colts secondary. Because you can't play into playing, let's play shallow cross and mesh all game long. You can't do that. You have to find ways to mix it up. And the Colts aren't very good against the run. They're allowing 131 yards per game on the ground. Try to run the football on them. Mm-hmm. There are a couple of different matchups there that can be exploited. How are they going to do that? And if the coaches do have a good game plan, can the players execute them? And those are questions that we have not seen answered consistently all season long. Sometimes the game plan looks good, and then the players don't execute. Sometimes the game plan's crap, and the players have to make up for it.
Yep.
I think about like certain situations where they went out very first play against Jacksonville. Perfect play call right away, and Pickett puts one a little bit too high, but it hits Deontay in both hands, and he can't come down with it. That's a
nice hat.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Robert. Nice hat. Yeah, but I mean,
they're compliments all day long.
Yeah, it's gotta share some joy, man, because there's a lot of reasons to be. And I'm seeing some comments, being like, listen, I think we'd be better off talking about who the head coach and OC or quarterback's going to be next year. Like, listen, like as for as much as it feels like the sky is falling here, it could be worse. It could be the Chargers right now.
Woo. GM and head coach Gonzo.
I mean, you could. I mean, woo. For as bad as the Steelers are, and for as long as the list is when it comes to why the Steelers are not a good football team right now, it doesn't mean that they're the worst team in the league.
Right.
Yeah, they've lost back-to-back games to 2-10 teams, and yeah, that's really, really terrible. It's bad, and I think it's revealed just how bad, or just how much this team is underachieving for the position, like for the players that you have on the roster, for who your head coach is, and his resume that he has. Yep. For all of for all the expectations, the Steelers are horribly underachieving, but it could be a lot worse.
Sorry.
Could be a lot worse.
Beefield says it's Canada's scheme. I think it's Canada's system, but now Faulkner and Sullivan are scheming it per se.
Yeah.
They're finding ways to get creative based off of that. And when you're running this system, this is what you get, quite frankly. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. This isn't an offense that benefits anybody. That's the bottom line of it. And we've said that ad nauseum by this point.
Yeah.
And Mark says, how soon could we forget that anemic offense put 21 on our defense? Now, that's obviously the Patriots putting up 21 on the Steelers on Thursday. Yeah. And we're not absolving the defense of doing anything right either. Now, They haven't done much right. Chris Hoke took liberty in shredding Minka Fitzpatrick for whatever reason. Yeah. The guy that's missed 4 games, that has a broken hand, that's wearing a club on his left hand right now. Yeah. Like, defense is not absolved from anything by any stretch. And Chris and I talked about this a few shows ago about evaluating Terrell Austin and finding a way to, double check basically what he's been doing and what he's done and what he's worked with. Now, again, it's easy to sit here and say, he's handicapped by the linebacker situation, which he is. There's no denying that.
Mm-hmm.
TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, Watt at least has not been healthy all year. I shouldn't say all year, but for the majority of the year. Let's be honest. He's getting doubled. He's getting chipped. He's getting thrown down. Now he's in the concussion protocol, recovering from that. He's out of the concussion protocol. Was dealing with all that. Alex Highsmith just got out of the concussion protocol. So, there's a lot of injuries on this defense too that we can't ignore. Cam Hayward obviously missed half the season, so like recovering from that in and of itself is tough. That being said, they've allowed a lot of yards, but not a lot of points. Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing that I think could come into play here against the Colts, where the Colts don't really get much of either. And now they don't have Jonathan Taylor, and they're going with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Now, I think Minshew's pretty closer to average, way closer to average than Mitch Trubisky is. I'll put it that way. I think the Colts have the quarterback advantage here in this game. I think they have plenty of advantages in this game. But that being said, like, I think there's ways to expose the Colts as well. I think there's a way to run the football on them, which they completely got away from over the last, or at least in the Patriots game. I have to double check the Cardinals results.
I mean, the Cardinals, they definitely didn't run the ball nearly enough. Patriots, I didn't expect them to run the ball because the Patriots are arguably the best in the league against the run, regardless of where they rank. I mean, their yards per carry against was ridiculous. It was the best in the NFL. They have a good argument for being the best run defense in the NFL. So I didn't expect the Steelers to run the ball against the Patriots. I expected them to do that against the Cardinals, and they didn't. Not only. I mean, and that was mainly the game plan. They just, if there was ever, like I've said it before, but if there was ever a game plan in which they needed to run on first down, run on second down, and then do what you need to do on third down, that was the game to do it.
Yeah.
Because that defense hasn't been able to stop anybody from running the football. This is another situation now. It doesn't need to be that blatant when it comes to establishing the run, but there are yards to be had against the Colts on the ground. How can you do that? And when you do run the football, when you do throw the football, how can you how can you scheme your guys open so that Mitch can get rid of the ball quickly so that he doesn't have to sit back there and get pounded by Indianapolis's pass rush? Because they will get after him if he holds onto the ball too long. So go and look at what Jake Browning and the Bengals did against him last week. How about that? Try to replicate that, and that's something that I think that's been lacking from the Steelers for a long time, is that they don't want to try to do what other teams do against it. They want to do things their way, and that's a stubborn way of doing things. If the Bengals kind of gave you the formula of how to beat this Colts defense, they put up 34 points against him with Jake Browning.
Yeah.
Now, I think more highly of Jake Browning. I think a lot of people do. But at the end of the day, he's still not a starting quarterback when all quarterbacks are healthy. He's not one of the 32 best in the NFL.
No. Nope.
So it's still a guy that's still a backup that did that against this defense. Now, and that's where you get into the coaching, the scheming, and all this kind of stuff. And we will have those conversations when it comes to who the next OC of the Steelers should be. But for right now, it is about, because the Steelers, like I said, if the season were to end today, they're in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yep.
Regardless of how you feel about it, that's just the way it is.
Hodge asked, is DeForest Buckner in or questionable? He does not have an injury designation, although he did not practice on Thursday with a back injury.
It was weird. He was a full participant Tuesday, then he was limited Wednesday, and then he didn't practice Thursday.
Yep.
But he doesn't have an injury designation. So it is something to kind of watch going into this game. I'm really curious about it.
Sure. Brent asks, do you think Tomlin will add more coaches to the tree? Could some of the problem be not enough eyes or teaching going on, coaches possibly overworked? I don't think as long as Mike Tomlin's here, he's going to hire more to his staff. I think he's content with the numbers and with the amount of people that are on the staff. And it's just about allocating the right duties. I think there's some position coaches that probably need swapped out, some assistants that need swapped out. Obviously, they need a new offensive coordinator and maybe a defensive coordinator. So it depends on the change. It depends on just how much changes really in the offseason.
I think
it's not impossible. It's really hard to say right now how much is going to change in the offseason.
Yeah, I think it's, when it comes to the way Tomlin puts his staff together, I think if there are situations where he thinks it would be, advantageous to hire a guy that maybe he wouldn't hire before. For example, when Brian Flores became available, I'm going to find room to put him on my staff. Like, And he did. Like it was like, well, I will create a position to have a guy of that caliber on my staff. And that I think is what Tomlin is willing to do. When it comes to the offensive coordinator hire, that's a completely different story because it depends on, first off, who he hires. And then that OC might want to have, it might be if it is like a Clint Kubiak or Brian Greasy or, somebody who's coming in with a bit more of a modern offense, is like, are they going to want to possibly add a little bit more, add another guy or two that maybe wouldn't be there before under, like, as they had under Randy Fichtner or Matt Canada? Will that OC want to have like a passing game coordinator, which is something the Steelers don't have right now?
Right.
Do they want to have like certain positions that are then created based off of who the new OC is? That, I think, is something that is also going to help, kind of put together what the staff is going to look like next year. But again, we are still 4 games away from that. We don't know. I know I'm excited to start writing about what this coaching staff is going to look like, who the candidates might be for OC, who I think should be OC going in. I think that's going to be fun. But as of right now, yeah, it's still playoff time right now.
Right. Steeler Girl 808 asks, you probably touched on this already, Corey, but how's the vibe in the locker room? I could go day by day on this and say, like, Friday going in, it was very quiet. Now, it depends on the day you think of, because, there's ebbs and flows and, players come in and out for treatment. There's different means, I guess, to get into that locker room as far as the players are concerned. But, like, overall, I think the mood of the locker room is one that's, like, in process of thought. Like, there's not, like, a buzz like you would think, because, of course, they just lost 2 really damning games in a row. There's not a sense of defeat per se. What I mean by that is, like, nobody's pointing fingers, nobody's arguing, nobody's starting anything, instigating anything. There's no, like, sadness either. There was a period, I think, earlier this week of acceptance. And they got to move on from what just happened. And they have to find a way to regroup, because once they get back into work on Tuesday, it's go time. It's game time. They got to get ready for the Colts. Now, I think it's clear just from conversations and just from hearing people, players talk about it, like, they're frustrated. They want to know what's going on. They want to know how they could fix this. Mm-hmm. They're trying to fix this as best as they can. But, you can't put a Ferrari engine in a Ford, if that makes sense. You just can't. Yeah. I mean, you want this offense to produce 35 points a game, 28 points a game. It's just not possible. Yeah. It's not possible with the system. It's not possible as the roster structured right now. It's very evident that it's not. Now, maybe a new offensive coordinator comes in with similar personnel and it works in a better fashion. But there's clearly limitations going on, which is why Najee Harris said what he said after the Browns game before Matt Canada was fired. There's clearly limitations, which is why Jalen Moore and Deontay Johnson both said they didn't take the Cardinals seriously, or rather, they took them lightly. Maybe they took them lightly.
Yeah.
Like, there's clearly limitations to what this team can do, and they're fighting through that right now. Like, this isn't a locker room that's obviously they're excited for opportunity, but they're not happy with what's going on right now. Who would be? I think there's frustrations. It's bubbling frustrations. But it's nothing that's going to be so over the top that, if they lose this game, they're not going to start pointing fingers and throwing darts, so to speak, at the next guy, the guy next to them.
Yeah. Mike asked me, he said, this is going to piss you off, Chris, but did Tomlin bring in Flores to help the team or to help his longtime friend? That doesn't piss me off at all. But no, that was a situation in which, you have a guy who was a former head coach that is pretty much being, he's not being hired because of the situation he had, with the, the lawsuit he had against multiple NFL teams. And Mike Tomlin looked at it as, that's a former head coach that's available to be hired. And if nobody wants to hire him, I will take him. Yeah. That's it. It really is that simple. And say what you will about Mike Tomlin, he is not without his criticisms. He's not without, his flaws and definitely is worthy of criticism, in certain areas. The dude does care very, very much about coaching, and there is no denying that. If you ever have a conversation with Mike Tomlin, you ask one question to him about coaching, he will go on and on and on and on about it because he just cares that much about it. Now, he cares about fostering coaches. He cares about, and it's not just about coaches like under him, like in his regime. It's just about coaching in general. He knew that whenever he hired Brian Flores, that he was probably not going to be there for more than a year because some other team was going to offer him a larger role, elsewhere, which is exactly what happened. He got, offered the defensive coordinator position with Minnesota, and Flores took it.
Yep.
Now, obviously, and it's in the comments here, there's a lot of questions of why didn't he just fire Terrell Austin and make Flores his own defensive coordinator? Now, that's a completely different question. And, as of right now, it sure does look like that Brian Flores would be a better option at defensive coordinator than Terrell Austin, but that's a completely different conversation. So yeah, that situation was completely of, and not only Tomlin, but just about everybody on the South side knew that Flores was way overqualified for the position he was in.
Of course. Keep in mind, Brian Flores was going through a lawsuit as well, the NFL.
Yeah, I mentioned
obviously
that,
with what happened in Miami. So
the Dolphins, the Giants, and I want to say there was another team too that he had a lawsuit against.
I believe there were 3 teams.
Yeah. I don't know who the third team was, but yeah.
Okay, on a football Friday, as we always do, it's time to get picks in. Let's get them in the chat. We'll put them on the screen. I will go first. It is so hard after what I just saw the last 2 games to think that the Steelers are going to win this football game. I want to find parts to be positive about. Yeah. I want to find ways that the Colts are deficient and the Steelers can beat them in. I want to say that Mitch Trubisky can have it all figured out. I want to say that the running game is going to be all figured out. I want to say that TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith are 100% and things will be fine. I can't sit here and say that in this moment. I'm going to say 22-13 Colts in this. I think the Colts win this. I think the Colts and Shane Steichen, I think they have something good going right now. Mm-hmm. I think that even with Gardner Minshew, even without Jonathan Taylor, if Ezekiel Elliott just went for 140 all-purpose yards, a guy that's been on the shelf all year, belly and all, at 28 years old, the former Cowboy running back. What could Zach Moss and Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce do? Mm-hmm. What could that Colts core do to expose what the Steelers have not been able to do against the Cardinals and the Patriots? I don't know. I don't think the Steelers are going to be able to rebound from this. I'm going to pick the Colts to win this 22-13, I think is the final.
Yeah. Let's see. I do keep kind of going back and forth on this one. And even then right now, I don't have a winner in my head as of right now. So I'm going to try to talk my way into it. In terms of what the matchup looks like on paper, the Steelers should win this game. They can run the ball against this defense. And like I mentioned before, if the Steelers find a way to get Trubisky to get the ball out quickly, he should be good enough to move the ball down the field. And again, when you have a guy such as Chris Boswell, that shortens the field for you in terms of just getting points. Now, obviously, you don't want to settle for field goals. You want to get touchdowns. I don't trust this offense in the red zone, so I do think the Steelers are limited to maybe a touchdown in this game, and then maybe they can add on 2 or 3 field goals. I don't have a lot of faith in this, either. I think Gardner Minshew is actually a pretty quality quarterback, and he is definitely overachieving in Shane Steichen's system. But that's what having an offensive coach does. Usually
what a good system does.
Yeah, it's what a good system does, and just like we've seen some defenses overachieve with Mike Tomlin, we can see. And I'm not just using Mike Tomlin isn't the only, exception there. Other, defensive-minded coaches. We've seen some defenses overachieve, I think, based off of what they have in terms of personnel and what's on the roster. You see certain offenses continue to be good and continue to be able to be executed regardless of who's at quarterback whenever you have coaches such as Shane Steichen and Kyle Shanahan and Andy Reid and all these other offensive-minded coaches. So, historically, the Steelers have the massive advantage. I think they're 21-6 against the Colts or something stupid.
It's big, yeah.
It's ridiculous. On paper, I think the Steelers are better. However, I am now at a point where I need you to prove it to me. I'm okay with taking an L on this one if I say the Colts are going to win this game and the Steelers prove me wrong. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And if they can't get it done this week when they had a mini bye to try to get, use those extra couple days to get some crap figured out, then they're not going to get this figured out. So I can't put a lot of faith in it. I'm going to say the Colts are going to win this one 20-16.
Okay. There you go. Rick, Michael Walker is not going to play fewer than 10 snaps. I guarantee that. He's going to play a lot. I do believe. I do believe Mike Walker is going to play a lot. You can't. I mean, as much as you don't want to see guys play, certain snaps, the Steelers aren't in a situation where they can. Nope. Can't pick and choose that.
No, not that position. A lot of other positions you can, not that one.
This is what it's down to. Now, it's important to note they just elevated Kyron Johnson to the active roster. So I'm expecting that to be more of a special teams move.
Yeah.
More than anything else, they need help with special teams.
Which also means Miles Jack's not playing.
Right. Miles Jack will not be elevated.
Yeah, because if he's not elevated, then he's not getting a hat. So
right. Okay, so Alex Highsmith was taken out of the concussion protocol like at the very last minute of our show yesterday.
Yep.
So he's expected to play. TJ Watt's cleared to play. Isaac Seumalo, as of right now, is the only questionable, but he told me yesterday that he is expecting to play. So everybody besides Kenny Pickett appears to be accounted for as of right now for the Steelers. Colts are missing Jonathan Taylor, and did they have an offensive tackle out as well?
Yes, they did. Yeah, they're right. They're right.
I think it is.
Yeah, their right tackle's out.
Right.
And then they have somebody else who's questionable.
The linebacker. It's not Zaire Franklin though, or EJ Speed.
Yeah, it's
or EJ Speed for that matter.
Yeah, and I think it was a situation where it doesn't look good. Like I would be surprised if he played based off of what happened in practice.
Yeah.
It was Alubi, I think his name is.
Sounds right.
Yeah, he popped up on Wednesday's report as limited, so that means he got injured in that, and then he didn't practice Thursday.
Gotcha.
Oh no, he's out. He's been downgraded to out.
Okay.
So he's out. So that's 3 Colts that are out. But he's primarily a special teams guy, so it's not a. Yeah.
All right. William believes. Do you believe? We will see on Saturday, 4:30 kickoff. We will be in Indianapolis. DK and I will be. We are leaving this evening to get over there. So we will be in the building for that kickoff and for whatever transpires on that field. Big one coming up. Massive playoff implications. Can the Steelers do it? Let's find out. DK and Ramon coming up in just about 28 minutes or so for the Ramon Foster Show. Reminder, you can find us on YouTube on DK Pittsburgh Sports on demand at any time for this program. You can also find us where podcasts are found. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, 24/7. Please like this episode. Please share. Please subscribe. It goes a very long way. And helps
Hashtag Elfie. Take your Elfies, while you can before Christmas.
All right. Well, Chris is going to go be festive. I'm going to go pack. He's Chris Halicke. I'm Corey Crisan. This has been the Southside Beat on a Football Friday. Happy birthday to my friend Taylor, by the way, if she's listening, and I know that she is. Cheers, everybody. Have a good one.